Now that you know the pathogenesis of the various features as well as investigations of constrictive pericarditis, let's summarize that. So, the presentation of constrictive pericarditis clinically is very closely going to mimic chronic liver disease or any cause of portal hypertension, that is, ascites and pedal edema. Okay, ascites and pedal edema is usually gradually progressing ascites and pedal edema, very similar to portal hypertension, is going to be your presentation. Look carefully at the JVP in these patients because you will have a very elevated JVP, especially on inspiration. Inspiration produces a sudden rise in the JVP, and that's what we call Kussmaul sign. Kussmaul sign is very, very typical of constrictive pericarditis. Very commonly seen in constrictive pericarditis, much more common than even tamponade. It's rarely seen in tamponade, but if you see Kussmaul sign, your first thing is, am I dealing with constrictive pericarditis? I will attach a link of a video of a patient having Kussmaul sign below in the show notes. Please have a look at that. Right. Similar to Kussmaul sign, another interesting feature that you might see is that the blood pressure is, of course, reduced, and you might even get pulsus paradoxus here. Remember, pulsus paradoxus or an inspiratory fall in the blood pressure of more than 10 millimeters of mercury is very classical of tamponade, but you might see it in constrictive pericarditis. So just remember this: Kussmaul's constriction. Kussmaul constricts. Kussmaul's constrictive pericarditis is very classical of constrictive pericarditis, rarely seen in tamponade. Pulsus paradoxus is very classical of tamponade, but can also be seen in constrictive pericarditis. Okay, so remember Kussmaul constricts. Very, very important. Don't miss that out. Apart from the two of this, you will also rarely see something called the broad bend sign. We've already discussed a bit of that. Because of the constriction, because of the fibrosis of the pericardium, during contraction, usually the apex pushes the chest wall, but here the entire heart is tightly locked inside the pericardium, so it's unable to push the chest wall forward. So you might not get the apical impulse. In fact, it might actually go inwards. The apex will actually go inwards during the contraction, right? This is rare, but it's called broadband sign, just for completion's sake. On auscultation, naturally, you're going to get a muffled heart sounds. S1, S2 might not be clear because of the thickening of the pericardium, and you might get a diastolic pericardial knock. Okay, so these are the clinical features that you will have, and whenever you have these set of clinical features, always think that there is a possibility of other conditions, because it's not very clear cut. Constrictive pericarditis mimics many other conditions. Always keep in mind certain other conditions like chronic liver disease, restrictive cardiomyopathy, usually associated with amyloidosis. Tamponade, even though it's an emergency, can sometimes mimic this condition. Right heart failure due to a wide variety of reasons like mitral stenosis, tricuspid regurgitation, or good old cor pulmonale, that is after COPD, can be very close differentials. Looking at some of the investigations in constrictive pericarditis, if you look at the ECG, naturally you have a thick layer of pericardium, right? You have a very thick layer of pericardium, right, around the heart. So naturally, it is going to lead to poor conduction of the electrical activity, and that will produce your classical low voltage complex or low voltage complex, right? And in case of the chest x-ray or CT scan, you can actually pick up areas of calcification. Old fibrous pericardium can be calcified, and that gives you a very good idea that you're dealing with constrictive pericarditis. Okay, so this will show you calcifications. Echo and MRI is primarily used to distinguish this from restrictive cardiomyopathy, something we'll discuss when we discuss cardiomyopathies. Finally, an old-fashioned test is right ventricular catheterization. Okay, nowadays nobody tries such stunts unless absolutely indicated. But if you put a catheter into the right ventricle, okay, when you're going to put a catheter into the right ventricle, right? You can put it via the IVC into the right atrium and into the right ventricle. You will have an idea about the right ventricular filling. So normally you will have the right ventricular pressure goes up during systole, comes down during diastole, then slowly goes up and then goes up again during systole and comes down during diastole. This is the usual pressure that you will see in the right ventricle. Now, in a patient of constrictive pericarditis, the systolic part is normal. It will go up just like usual. It will come down just like usual. But as the blood starts filling in diastole, remember the problem here is that the early part, the filling is relatively smooth. Okay, the early part, the filling is relatively smooth because the ventricle has not yet hit the fibrosed pericardial wall, right? But as the filling happens more and more, and as the ventricle, so initial part, the ventricle is filling smoothly just like normal. But once the ventricle hits the pericardium, it is unable to fill anymore. So suddenly this pressure will plateau off. This pressure will plateau off, and then you will have the systole. So this produces on right ventricular catheterization what is classically called a square root sign. Okay, square root sign. This is the dreaded sign that used to confuse us during mathematics. However, you can be happy that the only place that you will hear about square root sign is usually in multiple choice questions on right ventricular catheterization in constrictive pericarditis. Which is this classical sign? It is square root sign. It is not very important for you nowadays because we don't really need to do such invasive procedures to diagnose constrictive pericarditis. Now, in order to distinguish these conditions from constrictive pericarditis, we usually do a few investigations. We've discussed some of these investigations. The ECG very classically will show you low voltage complexes, very similar to tamponade or even pericardial effusion. But the X-ray and CT will give you much better information because many a times the fibrosed pericardium is also calcified. We have a fibrosed calcified pericardium. That would be a very good hint that you're dealing with a constrictive pericarditis. Echocardiography, of course, is very, very useful because it will distinguish from other conditions like restrictive cardiomyopathy as well as cardiac tamponade. Right ventricular catheterization is not done nowadays, but I did tell you how that leads to the classical square root sign. Okay, so that's just a trivia that you can remember for your MCQs or something, but not usually done. Now, management of constrictive pericarditis is very, very difficult and challenging. Many of these patients do not respond very well to surgery. They are already very sick and they might die during surgery. So, the first course of management is to decongest the patient by removing a lot of the extra fluid. So you would want to give diuretics very, very carefully because already you know there is not a lot of filling. So carefully look at the blood pressure, give a little bit of diuretic so that a lot of the congestion can be removed and the patient will be symptomatically better. If it's very different, and of course, you will have to treat the underlying condition. Constrictive pericarditis, once there is full constriction, it's very difficult to treat it. You can prevent it by adding anti inflammatories like steroids. We have already seen how in tuberculous pericarditis, you should add at least 2 months of steroids, zero point 0.5 milligram per kg of prednisolone. Very, very useful to prevent the constriction developing. Okay, once there is full blown pericardial constriction, it's very difficult to treat. There is a surgical procedure where the pericardium is incised and completely stripped away from the myocardium. Now this is a pericardiectomy or a decortication surgery. Very, very challenging surgery for the cardiothoracic vascular surgeon. Outcomes are not very good, but these patients can be managed surgically as well. So, to wrap up, you should remember that pericarditis can present in multiple ways. It can present as acute pericarditis after a viral infection. you should know how to distinguish the diffuse ST segment elevation with concavity upwards and distinguish that from myocarditis. You can also see there will be some PR depression in these patients. The classical nature of pericarditis pain, which radiates to the trapezius muscle, sharp pricking kind of pain, which decreases on leaning forward, should also give away a very good indication that you're not dealing with myocarditis or MI. Management of acute pericarditis is usually managing the underlying condition and symptomatic. In conditions like tubercular, please remember steroids have a very important role. One of the complications that we did discuss of pericarditis is cardiac tamponade. Okay, that is once the compression of the ventricle is so severe that there is no filling, it is an emergency. Identify the tamponade using the Beck's triad. Once you identify the Beck's triad, very important is an echocardiography. It will show you right ventricular diastolic collapse, and the moment you see it, you should do a guided pericardiocentesis. Of course, manage the underlying condition. Lastly, the patient with constrictive pericarditis will come to you mimicking multiple other conditions like chronic liver disease. It is up to you to identify constrictive pericarditis by looking for subtle signs, okay, like history of tuberculosis, looking for the pericardial knock if you can get a hepatomegaly instead of a shrunken liver. Echocardiography is very, very useful to distinguish from other conditions. The management of constrictive pericarditis is difficult, but you will be able to get some symptomatic improvement with diuretics, and of course, surgery is the last treatment that we resort to. I hope that covers a rather interesting and enigmatic topic of pericarditis. We have also included a table of characteristics which distinguish cardiac tamponade from constrictive pericarditis. It would be very, very useful for you to have a look at that. If you have any doubts on this topic, please feel free to mail us or send your feedback to us. You can even WhatsApp us on the number that is given, right? Continue watching our sessions. Please like and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for our latest updates. Thank you.